everyone, how's it going? So what am I working on now? Well, I'm working on that Toyota Tacoma with the broken wheel stud, the one that lost the wheel, and I'm going to be replacing the wheel studs. And like I said, some situation like this, you're going to replace all the wheel studs, especially when a wheel falls off, because you don't know if a stud has been compromised. You know, a stud could be bent, which I can see one is bent, but they could be weakened and everything else, because they could have been, you know, flexing and stuff like that. And, you know, you flex a piece of metal enough, it'll eventually break. So that's the reason for replacing all of them. It's a safety factor. You're doing the one, just do the rest. So, okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to pull this caliper off so I can get the rotor off, so then we have access to the wheel studs. So let's do that. Here's this. So let me get you set up on my tripod. I got to get a new tripod. I broke the darn thing yesterday, but it's still working, so it'll serve its purpose for right now. Actually, let me go a little bit higher. What I'm going to do is caliper mounting bolts, which are in here. I'm going to break them free. I'm going to use a wrench for this to get these out of here. And the reason being is you can't see it. On the back side, there's a brake line that's like really close. And I hope that this stud will come out, or this bolt will come out. I can't get a socket in there because I'll hit the hard brake line. But I want to take a chance of a socket hitting it and creating a problem. The stud actually, or the bolt actually is, see it now? It's actually hitting the line. So, but it's loose, so I should be able to get the caliper off and then the bolt should come out. So let's get the lower one out now, and let's see. And I'm breaking free with a box end of the gear wrench. I mentioned that before, especially when you deal with something that's very tight. Use the box end first. Use the box end, use a regular box wrench, something. If you use the gear wrench side, yeah, it'll work, but you know what? You'll shorten the life of your gear wrench. Ask me how I know this. One bolt's out, other bolt's out. So for now, let me just stick this caliper right there. But what I'm gonna do, I actually have this hanger here. Now this hanger that I have, this is from the parts store. What happens is this gets stuck into like exhaust pipes that they hang from the ceiling, and it's used to like keep stuff out of the way, basically, but exhaust pipes. I know people in parts stores, obviously, because of what I do, and I can get them to give me these. You can buy them online, they're hard to find though. So the nice thing about these is they're so heavy duty, they're able to hold a pretty heavy caliper. So, you see that? I just have it going through the loop of the coil spring. So now, rotor comes off, and reasonably easy. I don't know if it's hard to see. This stud is definitely bent. It's probably very difficult to notice it in the video, but I can see it with my eye that it's bent. Plus, I think this one is bent also. So, yeah, it's hard. It's very difficult to see, but I can see it with my eye that this one is off whack. So, all right, let's knock those out of there. This shouldn't be a big deal. Got grease on my arm. Oops. Sorry about that. See, that one actually I didn't have to hit that hard at all, and that one came out. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a wire brush on this, and the reason for that too is because everything was moving around so much. I'd just be afraid of there being some debris embedded on here. So I got comments on the brake video that I did on the Jeep where people said, oh, you should have used a wire brush. I ran my fingers on it, it felt fine. That's why I wasn't too concerned about it. This one I could feel something. Alright, so I'm good with that. Now I have new wheel studs. Now we are putting the factory wheel studs in. I don't have a way of looking up for like extra long wheel studs or anything like that. Like this should be the same length as the factory one. And as you can see, it is. It's the same length. But anyway, I don't have a way of looking up like extra long ones and trying to deal with the parts store and getting them to look at up extra long ones. It's darn near impossible. So the customer is supposedly going to be bringing down the 4 original wheels sometime this afternoon. So these lugs will work fine with that. So now we have to install these. Well, how do you install these things? All right, let me show you. Hang on a second. All right, so here's an installer. Interesting thing to note, I just realized I've had this thing for many, many, many years. I don't know who makes it, if it's a Lyle or whatever. Here's for a larger wheel stud, like for a truck or something like that. And it's basically like a throwout bearing. You see that? So what happens is this piece rests up against the hub while you have the lug nut in on this side. And it acts like a roller bearing. Whoops. Basically. See that? Because this part will hit first. This one is for the passenger cars, like this. And believe it or not, the bearing is actually locked up in it. So what I'm going to do, I just realized this now, so I'm going to have to get a new one of these. Like I said, I've had this thing for many years. The inner sleeve rotates, but that's fine. But the outer piece here, the shell that makes a contact first, it's actually seized up. So I'm going to spray a little bit of WD-40 on here because this is just going to spin. I don't want it to gall the snot out of the flange here. So what we're going to do is this tool will take a stock lug nut, and I'm actually going to use an old one because we're replacing all the lugs. So here's an old one. The old one will fit in here like such. The stud is going to come through that flange and then into the tool, and I'm going to be able to drag it in with the lug. And the idea is the outer shell here goes like this with the lug as it tightens. But like I said, the throwout bearing portion of this is actually seized up. So it's not going to work exactly like I had hoped, but it'll work. And a little lubrication never hurt anything, especially on the threads. So there's that. There's that. Thread this in. And it kind of self-centers it because of the bevel inside there. So let's see. So now we're going to tighten it up, and you'll see it'll drag that stud in, and the stud will bottom out into the flange. So let me actually lower you down a little bit because it's going to want to rotate that way anyway. Put the socket on here. Because these are spline drives, so you need a special socket on there. You hear how the tone changed? So it dragged it in, it tightened it up. You're done. So now let's do all the other ones. And like I said, I'm going to have to order a new one of these, which is fine. Now, if you're doing a whole bunch of these, you may want to alternate lug nuts because the lug nuts themselves can get really, really hot in the process of doing this. Plus, they can get damaged too. I'm going to back you up so you get a better view. Yeah, like that. And luckily on this one, the studs go right in. Because sometimes the stud will hit the backing plate or it'll hit the hub or whatever. And I've actually had people say to me, because sometimes the stud will actually come with the flat ground into it. And I've actually had people say to me, because I've ground some down, they're like, oh, you're compromising the integrity of the stud. No, you're really not, because some of them actually come through that way. So you're not really compromising the integrity of it. See, now I'm actually going to change this lug because it's starting to act a little wonky. That's good. Install another one there. Spray it up with a little WD. And already this lug nut's getting a little wonky, so let me change this one out. That made it look a little more violent than it actually is. Really not a problem holding it. Actually, let me spray it first. That's it, they're all installed. So now, we know they're all good. Let's go ahead and put the caliper back on. All right, so now with that part of the equation done, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit this with a little brake clean. And the reason for that too is, if there's any dirt particles that might have sat there, I don't want them getting completely embedded behind the rotor. I just wanted to look at the rotor, see what it looked like, make sure there wasn't any damage to it. There's a little damage on the edge, but that's not going to affect anything. You may be asking yourself why I'm threading on the lug nut. It's going to hold the rotor in place, that's all. I got my handy little holding tool. Put the caliper back in place. We get the one bolt going through first because the line is going to block me. Otherwise, all I'm doing is threading it in with my fingers. And the same with the bottom bolt. Just wiggle it around, get it caught. Alright, so gear wrench. You use it to snug it. Top and bottom bolt. And now I'm going to tighten it with a box end. There we go. Good and tight. So that's it. Pretty quick and easy. It's not that difficult. Some vehicles, yeah, they can be a real pain. I've actually had some vehicles where you cannot get the wheel studs in. You actually have to press the hub flange out of the bearing, which at that point you may as well put a new bearing in it if you're disturbing it that much. I can't remember what kind of vehicles that was on, but I have seen it. So, all right, let's button this up. All right, so the customer is going to be coming down with the factory wheels, and we're going to throw that on later today. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for now. Right, hopefully you got something out. Be safe out there with aftermarket wheels, because like I said, if the stud's not long enough, you may be only grabbing it by 4 or 5 threads. I actually had a guy with an Infinity who put wheel spacers on it, one of those big Infinity Q whatever SUVs, like the biggest one they make, and he wanted the wheels to stick out further. He put wheel spacers on it. He did it himself, put the lug nuts on. He lost both front wheels going down the road. The front wheels, with the spacers on there, he was only catching 3 threads. That was it. So how safe is that? It is not safe at all. So just something to consider. How long are your studs? How many threads are you actually grabbing with the lug nut? So, all right. Hopefully you're getting something out of that. If you did, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.